Let's do this. It was an April morning, 1997. I was newly married, just bought a house, and I got fired that morning. And I was inspired that morning because I knew that I was never going back to corporate America. My name is Chris Palermo. I own Global Communication Networks. I'm here in Boca Raton, Florida. I'm a husband and father, and I love going to work every day. Today, we're here to talk about leading and profiting from the task-oriented workforce. For me, it all started as a sales rep working for companies called AT&T, AllNet Communications, Cable and Wireless. For a salesperson, it's all about customer experience. Think about your experiences with Uber, Lyft, Airbnb. If you have a good experience, people talk. And ultimately, it's the people's voice that makes the difference. If you're better at a task than others, you win. We win all the time. Winning is great, especially if you're in sales. And in this rapidly evolving world we live in, where businesses are created every minute, it's important to understand this concept. It's not about building the better widget. There are thousands of companies out there that have a slightly inferior product than their competition that win all the time. It's because they understand the secret. All business starts and ends with the customer experience. I learned this early on as a salesperson. I worked harder. I was more customer-centric than my peers. And while this led to my career accelerating more rapidly, it also led to my frustration. You see, when you work for a large corporation and you leave, your customer that trusts you stays with the corporation. The corporation thinks it's their fundamental right. The customer thinks it's their right to move with you, the person that they trust. That just didn't sit right with me. I felt that from climbing the ranks in these companies, I should be able to keep the customers that I worked so hard to get. I called for a meeting with my friend, my mentor, and my director. And I told him I had this problem with customer relationship and customer ownership. He listened, and then he fired me. He said, "There's a place for you in this company. You're a great salesperson, but you really need to think about going into business for yourself." So I thought about it. See, my idea was to open a channel agency model where I can be that trusted person for all of our customers. I'd never have to leave them. I could sell them everything that they wanted. And we'll get to that in a minute. My director told me, "You should start a business." He said, "You have a large commission check coming. Think about it." Didn't take too long for me to think that I really wanted to jump into that entrepreneurial world and start that business. One thing that I want you to understand is it's all about a task done better. If you have a task and you do it better, that's what makes all the difference. Chipmunk is a company headquartered right here in Boca Raton and the winner of the FAU investment program. They saw a task that they could do better. Raise of hands for anybody in the audience that has ordered a subscription box. You know, FabFitFun, home delivery foods. I see a bunch of hands. There's companies All companies want to have a successful subscription box company. Most of these companies are horrible at this because it's the task of building the box, packing the box, packaging the box, shipping the box, and then taking care of all the returns. Enter Chipmunk. They figured that if they can do that task better and their customer can keep their customers longer, they'd be successful. Today, they do thousands of orders every day, including all of those returns. They've grown so much and have been so profitable that they haven't had to reach outside for funding to support their growth. Just another task that someone thought of done better. So as we talk about starting businesses, starting a business itself is a task. We have to realize that because most people, they don't go into that thinking that we have to have a business plan and we have to have a task done better and we have to have funding. 20% of businesses that start will be out of business by their first year. After 5 years, 50% of those businesses will be out of business. That's tough to understand, especially when you're 27 years old. Even worse, 87% of that remaining 50% will have money problems. And that makes sense because companies like I did self-fund. And in the end, only 30% of those businesses will be profitable, with the rest pouring their money right back into the business, hoping to one day turn a profit. So I want people to understand that when they're starting a business. It's great to start a business, but the task is to have that plan. 16% of business owners are under the age of 35, with the vast majority being over the age of 50. So these are all important facts that everyone needs to know. I really needed to think about that. I spoke to my wife. We decided that we were going to use her salary, that commission check, and if we needed to go into savings, business was over. I was going back to corporate America. First thing I decided is I needed to get as far away from the house as possible. The TV was on, and I knew that if I'd go home for lunch, I'd probably end up staying there. So 22 years ago, I look in the phone book, and I find companies like WeWork and Pipeline Brickle. So no, I'm just checking you guys because those companies were not around 22 years ago. But I had to go old school on this. I had to find the cheapest office that I can sit at with a desk. And I found an 8x10 office for $350 a month, and that was my place. My task for the day was to have the 50-point rule. Now, what's the 50-point rule, you ask? I'm going to tell you. It's talking to 50 people a day. It's kind of a tough task. The way that I broke it down was I'd speak to 15 people, and then I allowed myself to take a break. And then I'd speak to another 10 people before I'd have lunch. And lunch could be at 11 or it could be at 2 o'clock. But I had to speak to 25 people before that happened. After lunch, I'd speak to 15 more people, take that break, and another 10 people. Task completed. My day was over. The goal for the year was to sell $100,000 in monthly recurring revenue or $1.2 million in annual. I did this every day for a year. I came in almost double my goal, $185,000, almost $2 million for that year. And I knew I had a thriving business. I set my appointments, I made my calls, and I closed a lot of sales. One thing to understand when you're making those calls is it takes 18 phone calls just to connect to one possible prospect. When I was working for these corporations, my job was to sell the best product that they had available. Now, No one company can offer the best solution for every customer. It was always maybe a little bit the right fit, and I can make it work, kind of put that square peg in the round hole, but it was never the right fit. I wanted to start a business that I could bring in the vendors from all over the United States and all over the world and make sure that I had the right fit for that customer that trusted us. Today, we have over 250 providers that we work with to ensure that our customer has the right fitting product. HubSpot says that customers are only the right fit about 50% of the time for what is sold to them. It leads to cancellations, leads to business churn, everything that a business owner does not want. So I don't know if there's people out there where you start in one business and you retire in that same business. My parents did that. A lot of my friends' parents did that. But those days are quickly ending because those jobs are now being taken up by tasks. It's called the gig economy. Show of hands if anyone knows what the gig economy is. It's kind of a slang term for a gig that people do or a job that they complete. The millennials do the gig economy pretty well. Now, 69% of millennials feel that reporting to an office every day from 9 to 5 is overrated. 89% of millennials feel they'd rather choose where and when to complete their tasks or their work. It's all about the gig economy. Today, the gig economy is comprised of full-time contractors and freelancers, not full-time employees. So I guess when you look at these millennials, they are entrepreneurs in a way also. A great way of a task done well. A company by the name of Squeeze out of Boca Raton. It's insurance. Everyone has to have insurance. You have car insurance, health insurance, homeowners insurance. If you don't keep up with the task of making sure that your premiums don't go up every year, they're going up. Squeeze realized this. You just sign up for their site, and every 6 months they will give you brand new premiums to consider. If you like one of them, click. They take care of the rest. It's another way a task is done better. Spin. I don't know if any of you have seen that, Spin, but 500 million rides will be taken this month for under 3 miles. It's a lot of rides. They're going across college campuses. They're going across crowded metropolitan areas. Cars aren't always the best option. They take longer to get there by cars. And walking, well, sometimes it's just too far. Enter Spin. It's a dockless scooter that you can find on just any of those street corners. Swipe your card, take it for a spin. A lot of people use these to go to work. The task that Spin got better was you don't have to bring that scooter back to the docking station when you're finished. Just leave it where you're finished. It's another task done better by Spin. They were just sold to Ford for $100 million. So how did my company do 22 years later? Well, we've been profitable every year. We've grown every year. We've been on Inc. magazine list of fastest growing companies 3 times. My team is now all task individuals, and they're the best at doing their task. If it's a salesperson, it's their task of customer relationship. If it's a project manager, it's the task of implementation. All our tasks are world class. So as a business owner, I figured maybe I can help other businesses do their tasks better. So I've invested in some companies. I mentioned Squeeze earlier. Another one is Rapid Scale out of Irvine, California. Their task is fixing broken computers. A lot of companies They hire full-time individuals. It's very expensive to set up computers, load all of the licensing into computers, fix them. RapidScale does it in the cloud. It's a small cost per month to do this for people to have their computers working all the time. They were just sold for a very large multiple that I'm happy to say. But it's not about me. This is about you and what tasks you're thinking that you can do better. The owners of Uber, or the guy that started Uber, he figured out that archaic way of doing a ride, of having a ride. There's so many times that I've listened to people say, gosh, I had that idea 5 years ago, but they don't do anything with it. You should write down all of these ideas, these tasks that bother you, that you think that you could do better. Do this for 30 days. After 30 days, go back to that list. Look at those things that still bother you. Talk them over with your friends. If you have any questions, I'll be here afterwards to answer some of them. But it's been a pleasure to talk to you tonight. Thank you very much.